All right, this is 200 Q&A number one. Proper names: Detective Shipe, Centennial, I don't know, Hospital, Walkie Talkie,
Centinela.
Centinela. You guys know what we're talking about. Okay.
Okay.
Is that true?
No, it's not.
Did you tell him you knew it was stolen?
No, I did not.
Did Detective Shipe ask you if you thought this gun was stolen?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember what you told him?
I told him that I had bought the firearm from a gentleman off the street, and at the time that the firearm was broken. So I didn't know if it was stolen or not.
Let me ask you this one more time so we're all clear. Were you going to sell that marijuana?
No.
So you bought a gun off a guy on the street, right?
Yes, yes,
A complete stranger to you.
yes.
How much did he want for it?
He wanted $100, but I only had 56 bucks on me.
So he took 56?
He took the 50 because I needed $6 to get home.
How did you happen to run into this particular stranger who had a gun to sell?
Was coming from where I had dropped my car off to be serviced, and I met him walking.
And you said, got a gun I can buy?
No, I did not. He asked me. The gentleman was a drug user. He said that he had something he wanted to get rid of real quick.
And it was a gun, a broken gun, I think you said?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so you wanted a broken gun that cost $50. Why?
At the time, I was only 17. I didn't know that much about a firearm, so
Why did you want a gun? Just for fun?
not necessarily.
Why then?
Well, I wanted one. I had a fascination with guns.
And a fascination such that you bought a broken one off of a stranger, drug user on the street, right?
Correct.
And I'm sure you must have been aware, even at the young age of 17, that there were places that people could go to buy guns if they really wanted, like gun shops, right?
Yes, but I did know at the age of 17 you had to be 21 to obtain one.
And buying it off the street seems like a good way to get one when you can't otherwise get it, right?
Correct.
That is what you wanted.
Correct.
Was there anything about the drug user that made you think he was perhaps a legitimate man, perhaps an owner of a gun shop himself?
Well, at the time I didn't. No, not a gun shop. No.
No. And were you aware when you were 17 that there are all sorts of rules and regulations that govern guns to make sure that they don't get sold illegally?
Not to the extent because I was 17. I wasn't familiar with that knowledge.
Do you have some idea, maybe less than you've got now?
Somewhat, but I had lesser than I do now.
Did it ever occur to you while you were buying this that perhaps that person had stolen the gun and that they didn't legitimately have the gun you were buying?
No.
Never occurred to you.
Well, it occurred to me drug users often sell their possessions to get money to use drugs also.
So that you knew at 17.
Correct.
Well, but you didn't know about gun regulations at 17?
Well, my father, he was a drug user, so I did have the experience of knowing a drug user.
Now, you said you are a security guard at Centinela Hospital, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what kind of equipment do you carry as a security guard there?
I carry a baton, I carry pepper spray, I carry handcuffs, and I carry a walkie-talkie.
Do you have the ability as a security guard to, well, quell disturbances at the hospital?
Meaning,
Well, if there's something that needs a security guard, are you authorized as part of your position to use that baton, the pepper spray, the handcuffs to control the situation?
yes, I am certified.
What does that certification process involve? A background check, perhaps?
Yes, ma'am.
They have to check you out to make sure you're okay?
Yes, ma'am.
How about drug testing? Does the hospital drug test you?
Yes, ma'am.
And would marijuana trigger the drug test, a positive test?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you lose your job if you tested positive for marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been drug tested?
Yes, I have.
How often does the drug testing occur?
Once for employment.
Was that at the beginning or a random time?
Beginning of the employment.
How long have you been working at the hospital?
I've been working there since October 31st of 2002.
And did you like the job?
Did I like the job?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Does it pay pretty good?
Yes, it does.
A job you'd like to keep?
Yes, ma'am.
And you smoke marijuana on a daily basis?
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you do that?
Because I have very, very bad back pains. And at that time, I didn't have any medical attention. So that was relieving my pain.
It sounds like you understood that if you had been drug tested and you tested positive for the marijuana, you'd lose your job, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But you did it anyway because of these back pains, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever see a doctor for these back pains?
No, I don't have any medical attention.
You are not getting medical benefits through your job?
I just made full-time position where I'm at now.
Now, you said that you were at the gas station and that's how you acquired sort of a fire sale style purchasing of all this marijuana, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You were at the gas station buying a cigar, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that at the inside area where they sell like mints and candy and stuff? Oh. I was confused. Okay. 200 Q&A number 2. Proper names: Beth, X, Diane, and Toyota. Did she resent that you were not giving her stuff from her mother's estate when you remarried?
I would assume that she did feel that way.
Did she ever accuse you of that or tell you that was the reason?
Not directly, no.
Indirectly, did you hear those were the reasons?
No, I did not.
Did you ever hear that she felt you basically cheated her out of her mother's estate?
I would expect she would come up with something like that. She's that kind of person, always blaming somebody else. It is never her fault.
This incident where she and Beth, or she was screaming at you, I guess, about something.
Oh, yes, about being late. She accused me of being late to spite her.
How many days after the incident did you stay in the house with your wife?
We stayed as long as we wanted. We weren't going to let her ruin anything for us.
Are you talking weeks or what?
Maybe a week or two. I'm not quite sure, you know.
It wasn't the kind of thing where you had an argument and just left the house immediately?
No, it wasn't like that.
After that one argument, did you have any other times where she yelled and screamed at you?
No, not really.
So this is one incident?
Except Beth does remember one thing.
Let me instruct you not to tell me what Beth remembers.
No. What I'm going to tell you and what Beth remembers also is that in the initial agreement, we said that when we would stay there, we would pay the utilities for the period of time that we stayed there. We did not want to cause her any kind of a problem, so she would come up to us just before I left, demanding that I pay the utilities. Leave me a check for X number of dollars. I don't remember what the number was, but I left the check and then you can go home. Well, that did make a big impression on Beth.
Did you leave her a check for the utilities?
Yes, I did. I always kept my agreement with her. She never kept her agreement with me.
When was the last time you and Diane lived together under the same roof?
Well, that would have been it.
What year was that?
The year I was there that we were talking about just now.
What was the year? Do you recall?
No, I don't. Like I said, I'm pretty bad with dates.
But it was several years ago?
Yes, it was.
At that time, you became aware that Diane had no reasonable way of paying anything in connection with maintaining the house.
She said she could.
Did you ever sit with her and ask her how?
I never sat down and asked her how. I told her that she could not maintain the house under her conditions. I told her many times.
During those years, 98 up to 2003, did you know of any employment that she had consistent acts of employment?
The only two things that I know she did was, number one, she worked at the Toyota dealership in town.
How long?
I haven't the faintest idea because the next time I tried to contact her at home, I couldn't. So I called the Toyota dealer. I figured I would get her at work.
Do you know whether she was there then?
She wasn't there then.
Did she work as a receptionist?
I have no idea what job she had.
Do you know whether or not she rented out any of the boat slips or the dock?
Yes, she did.
What is it that you do know about that?
I know that she was collecting rent from the boat dock. When I came down, a boat was parked there. Well, not when I came down, but when my friend came, he said, "You got a boat on your dock."
Do you know how much money she was receiving?
I haven't the faintest idea what kind of agreement or what kind of income she had from that.
Did she ever share any of the money with you?
No. Well, I didn't know it existed, you know.
Let me show you this. You were looking for a letter that might be a response to the November 4, 2003 letter. Let me ask you if that's the letter that you were looking for.
Yes, this one here. This is the letter.
Yes, look at that. Take a second and look at that. On November 4, 2003, she sent the letter, and you're saying that you sent a response?
Oh, yes, I sent her a response to her letter.
Is that stated in what you were thinking about?
This was about the credit card she stuck me with. She expected me to pay the card when I didn't even use it.
Wait a second. Just look at that and look at the date on it. Is that the response?
Yes, that is the response. The 13th of December.
What year are you talking about?
It is 2003.
This was November 4, 2003, and then shortly afterwards?
Okay, this one here, the first one is she had taken credit cards out in my name and used it as saying she was my wife.
Take a second and look at that. Please look carefully at what I am showing you.
Okay. My suggestion to you is, number one, we must sell the Prince property. And I was telling her what to do with the money that she would get from that. And so talking to her now as her father, I even put it here. Every move you've made so far has resulted in some form of a bigger problem.
Do you think that is the response you're talking about?
Yes, it is. That is what we have.
Okay, Q&A number 1 at 180. Proper names: Mary Stevens, Center Street, Portland, Maine. Stevens, George L. Stevens, Cambridge Street, Boston, Massachusetts. Boston, Portland, ADC. Mike Davis, South Boston, Mall of South Shore Plaza. Will you state your full name and address?
Mary Stevens, 267 Center Street, Portland, Maine.
Stevens, Stevens.
Right.
Are you married or single?
Married.
Do you have any children?
I have 8.
8 children?
Yes.
What are their ages?
20 down to 5.
How old are you?
I am 40.
What is your date of birth?
October 15, 69.
1969. What is your husband's name?
George L. Stevens.
All right. How long have you lived at your present address?
Just approximately a little over a year.
Do you live with anybody there other than your family, other than your husband and children?
No, just my family.
Where did you live before that?
266 Cambridge Street.
Where?
In Boston, Massachusetts.
Who did you live with there?
I lived with my family, my children.
How long did you live at that address?
I lived there for like 12 years.
During the time that you lived in Boston, were you living with your husband?
At the time of the accident?
No, during the 12 years that you had lived in Boston.
Yes, I did.
You say you now live in Portland. Did I understand you correctly?
Yes.
Before you lived in Portland, you lived in Boston for 12 years?
Yes.
Did you live with your husband at that address?
Up until the time I got separated.
Up until the time you got separated. When was that?
I got legally separated 4 years ago.
That would be in 2005?
Yes.
You were living in Boston then?
Yes.
At that same address?
Yes.
Did you live with your children after your separation from your husband?
Yes.
Are you still legally separated from him, or are you divorced?
No, legally separated.
Have you been legally separated since 2005?
Yes.
You haven't lived with him since that time?
No, I was not living with him before that, but I just made it legal.
Do you have any divorce action pending?
Not at the present time.
Now, what is your occupation?
I am just home. I am home with my children.
Are you a homemaker?
Yes.
This is an occupation enough, isn't it?
Right.
Right. Now, at the time this accident, which occurred on January 1, 2006.
Wait a minute. You have got the wrong date.
Have I? What was the date?
February 2nd.
January 2nd?
No, February 2nd.
On or about February 2nd, 2006, were you employed?
No.
You were not. What is your source of income?
I live on $889 every 2 weeks.
What is that, ABC?
Partially. My husband supports me.
And all of your children live at home with you, do they?
Yes, they do.
Even the 20-year-old?
Yes, she goes to college.
Now, calling your attention to February 2, 2006, were you involved in an accident?
Yes, I was.
In whose car were you riding at the time?
Mike Davis.
Where does he live?
He lives in South Boston.
What is his address, if you know?
I don't know his address.
How did you happen to be in his car?
I was a passenger in his car.
Did you know Mike Davis before this accident?
Yes, I did.
Was he a friend of yours?
He was a friend.
Was anybody else in the car at the time of the accident?
No, there was nobody else.
And this accident occurred at about what time?
Sometime after midnight.
How long after midnight? What is your best memory of the time that it occurred?
Maybe 12:30, in around that time.
12:30 a.m. That was on February 2nd. It wouldn't be over into February 3rd.
No, it was February 2nd.
It was the evening of February 1st. You were out with him and the accident occurred right after midnight.
Yes.
Where had you been that evening?
We went to the movie theater.
What theater?
In the mall of South Shore Plaza. Then we went for coffee afterwards. Then we started on the expressway. It was a sheet of ice.
I will come to that in a moment. You had been to a theater, then you stopped for refreshments,
For coffee.
then you were heading where?
The expressway to go back to Boston.
To your home?
Yes.
And during the entire evening, had you been alone with this gentleman?
Yes.
You say you don't know where he lives.
No, he lives in South Boston.
Where did he live at the time of the accident?
In South Boston.
Do you know the address?
I couldn't say offhand his address.
How long had you known him?
Let's see. About 6 months, maybe.
What time of night or day had you met him?
Well, he picked me up at my house. Probably, I imagine, maybe at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Did you go anywhere before you went to the movies?
No.
You didn't have anything to drink anywhere? No inference is intended here, but I am just looking for whatever I can find out.
I didn't have anything to drink. No.
You say you are on your way home
Yes.
to your home, is that right?
Right.
You were a passenger in the right front seat, I assume?
Yes.
What kind of car was it? Q&A number 2 at 180, proper names, Williams, Kastner, and Gibbs. Do you have 2 vehicles?
Yes.
You had 2 vehicles at that time also, is that correct?
Yes.
Was it just kind of an economy measure that you would take the bus?
Yes.
Do you have a driver's license?
Yes.
Who was it that you were working for?
I was working as a substitute word processor at Williams, Kastner, and Gibbs.
What was the agreement as to the duration of that?
It was 1 week.
Could you describe the events leading up to your accident of April 16, 1987 as completely as possible?
Okay. I was simply walking along the gravel path going towards the bus stop when there were some larger rocks in the middle of the gravel path, and my foot slipped on the rock. My ankle turned and broke, and I fell.
And the light conditions were daylight?
Right.
From what I understand this morning, prior to this injury, the last time you had traversed this route had been the evening before.
Correct.
And then the morning of that earlier day?
Right.
And had you traversed that same route both the evening before of the day before and the morning before of the day before?
Correct.
So you traversed the route 4 times within 2 days prior to your injury.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned that you saw some large rocks. I believe you said that you tripped on. How large were these rocks? Can you describe them for me?
Well, 4 or 5 inches in size. They were quite a bit larger than the smaller gravel.
Perhaps the size of a baseball?
Yes.
Did you pick up these rocks? Did you take these rocks at all?
No.
Has your attorney ever seen those rocks?
Yes. He was there this morning and saw the scene.
Were you able to positively identify these rocks as the same rocks, or at least they were of the same size?
No, I have no idea positively.
Except, as you mentioned, they were the same size? Yes or no, please?
The rocks that were there this morning are the same size of the rocks that were there the day of the accident.
Were there the same number of rocks as there were before?
I didn't count them.
Please understand that I'm not trying to annoy you, but I'm trying to find out if you are saying that the scene is identical to the way it was when you were injured, and that's what I'm trying to get at.
It's similar.
But again, getting to the precise question, I take it by that answer that you can't say it was identical to the scene when you were injured?
It's been over 2 years.
Please answer the question.
I can't say that it's identical.
Thank you. When was it that you returned to this scene?
I was there this morning.
What sort of investigation of the scene did you do this morning?
Merely looked at it.
Did anyone take any photographs of the scene?
Yes, my attorney took some video photographs.
What other things were done at the scene in preparation of your case?
Nothing.
You said there were several rocks. Do you know how many there were of what you thought were large size rocks?
No, I don't know.
I'd like to get a general ballpark if we can, since we're talking about baseball. Are we talking about 3 or more rocks?
Definitely.
A substantial amount more than 3?
Yes.
More than 10?
10 to 20.
Okay. Were you aware of the rocks when you put your foot down and made a decision of where you were going to place your foot?
I was walking. I was watching where I was walking.
You knew there were rocks there, certainly, that you had to pick through?
Certainly, certainly.
Now, did you actually step on a rock? Did you step between rocks?
I don't know.
Did you really see where you stepped? The soot through which you slipped, did you actually see your foot placed down on the rocks or near the rocks?
I know exactly where I fell. I couldn't go pick up the rocks and tell you this is the rock.
I understand that. What I'm trying to get at is, did you see your foot go down and step on a rock or step between rocks?
I don't remember.
But you said you know where you fell, and you fell near these rocks, right?
Correct.
After you tripped, were you able to identify where your foot had been or the rock you had stepped on?
I was in such pain that I didn't think of any of that.
And you weren't able to get back later and recreate where you put your foot or anything like that?
No.
These rocks had been there when you had walked this path before.
Yes.
So you'd walk by these rocks then, at least in the 2 days prior, 4 times.
Correct.
Had you ever had any problem walking in that area before?
No.
You'd never stumbled or tripped prior to that?
No.
After you recovered and again did part-time work, did you use that same route again?
Yes, I did.
Did you have any problems walking during those times?
No.
How many times would you say you used that same route after your injury?
I can't say.
And was it the identical route?